Good morning, and thank you for coming along to speak to listen to me today. My name's Chris Fechner. I'm the Chief Digital and Product Officer in Service New South Wales. Now, I'm going to talk not as a developer today, but as a person who looks after developers, so don't expect any demonstrations from me today. So, Service New South Wales is an organisation that was created, and I'll just go to the right slide, sorry. I'll do this first. Apologies. I'd like to acknowledge that we meet today on the traditional lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I pass my respects to elders past and present and extend those respects to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders in attendance today. I'm back into it. So Service New South Wales was created 6 years ago to change the way government interacted with its citizens. So its purpose was to be a customer service organisation that delivered world-class services to the citizens. Now, it did this in a customer-facing way through service centres, through a telephone channel, through our contact centres, but also through our digital channels. And the digital channels is the area that I look after specifically. Now, these digital channels needed to be looking at transforming the way government did digital. It had to be always on. So government was very much a 9-to-5 environment, and the needs of the citizens and the availability of the time of our citizens was really pushing outside of those areas. So always on was the thing that we really needed to work towards. It needed to be fast and effective. We needed to make sure that the services that we were delivering were going to the people at the right time, such that when they wanted to transact with government, it was simple, easy and reliable. And we wanted to make sure that as we went into this journey, that we continuously improved what we were giving to our customers, and that meant we had to be fast in deploy, but it also meant that we had to be very good in deployments. So we're looking at able to do this in a similar way across all of our environments, our shop fronts, our call centres and our digital channels, and the experience had to be the same. So that led us into a modern environment rather than what was a traditional process-centric environment in our existing hundreds of applications, hundreds of websites, hundreds of call centres, hundreds of like shop fronts for services for government. Now, over the last 6 years, we've changed 3 times really significantly in our digital delivery. We started off by just getting stuff out there quickly, making the services available to the citizens, such that we actually got our presence known. We've changed technology multiple times. So we've gone from a standard full stack deployments of solutions, gone into new technologies, and now moved to a microservices environment. So the way that we've changed has been to adapt to the needs of our citizens. But one thing that's been kept completely consistent is the fact that we've always got the citizen and the customer at the centre of everything that we do. So Service New South Wales has become, as I said, a very trusted brand. So it's actually the most recognised brand inside of New South Wales government. Now, just show of hands, who's local to Sydney, to New South Wales? All right, so that's good. This is going to make the rest of my experiment much better. Who has a My Service New South Wales account? All right, so this is really good as well. Who has received government funding or refunds through that My Service account? And do you like receiving money from government? All right, very good. So the other part of it is we also take some money from you as well. And one of the ways that we try and do that is to make it as seamless as possible for the citizen. All right, so registration is one of our biggest frequency transactions. Who has had an easy path of renewing their registration for their vehicle? Who's had a hard one? One. Why was it hard? Later, all right. So one of the things that Service New South Wales absolutely lives on is feedback from our citizens, and I'll talk about that a little bit too. But I suppose one of the things that we always looked at was how do we make government the best and most efficient that we can for citizens? And our technology plays a massive part in that. Our technology reduces our cost to serve, it increases the duration of our time that we can actually make services available, and it means that we can specialise with our customer service and our telephony services by taking out all of the mundane, easy, straightforward transactions. So that's where we go. So we've been looking to do things differently from the start. And as I said, one of the things that we really look for is customer satisfaction and customer feedback. Now, as an organisation, we have round about 99% positive feedback from our citizens through our shop fronts and our call centres. That's an incredibly high satisfaction, and we get quite big response rates. Sometimes in the 40% of people that go into our service centres will give feedback. So it's a pretty accurate rating as far as we're concerned. Now, digital channels are a little bit lower, 98%. And we constantly look to improve on that, and that's really the thing that we do with all of our research. And it's really making sure that we keep a profile of all of our customers, how they're interacting with us, and this is where being able to surface information about the behaviours of our systems and our customers really helps us to look forward. Now, also I think it's very important, I'd like to just point out that little icon down the bottom, Great Place to Work. So one of the things that Service New South Wales relies heavily on is its people. We do a lot to create what's called a DNA inside of Service New South Wales. It's the way we do things. It keeps the customer at the centre of everything we do. We support our staff in delivering excellent service to our customers. And we make sure that we have everything in place to make sure our employees are in the best position to do what they do best, which is serve our customers. So we were recently awarded a Great Place to Work. Now, this was the first public service agency ever to receive this accolade, and it's really a testament to the value and the work that our staff do. We placed 8th overall in organisations bigger than 1,000. So the good news from my perspective is we beat Atlassian. The bad side of it is we were beaten by SAP and Salesforce. So we really need to look at doing that. We've got a target for looking for number 5 next year. And certainly we're always looking for people that come to our organisations wanting to really deliver excellent quality services to our citizens. And that's what makes us a great place to work. One other quick point for other one is that the My Account that we actually use was one of our first technical deliverables. And it's basically a mechanism for us to allow an identity service or a logged-in transaction with all of our citizens. And we've got about 4.9 million, nearly 5 million as we go through. And this becomes really important because it allows that to be a really, really great opportunity for us to understand how our citizens are using our accounts and how they're actually able to work with this, what sort of transactions they're doing, how frequently they're doing them, and how sticky our services are. So things like when they come to our website, how long do they stay, where do they visit? So these are the sort of things that, again, I'll talk a little bit more about in the next slides, where we get some really good traction from tools such as New Relic. We decided when we started Service New South Wales that we weren't going to be a traditional organisation. We decided that we were actually going to work differently in a way that was really focused on delivering speedy outcomes in an efficient and effective way. So we decided that instead of doing traditional waterfall, as most government agencies were doing at the time they started, that we would actually move towards an agile environment. We decided that we would really invest heavily in our people, and we worked with lots of partner groups to develop our ways of working. Now, these are the things that sort of help us remember that the customer is the most important thing that we're serving, and that we're ensuring that we're building the best and most effective equipment that we have. So the sort of approaches that we went for our development environment was extreme agile. So we've been doing paired programming now for about 12 months. And we see quite a lot of things that it takes a lot of effort in that space to create an environment where people can work effectively in pairs. Like, it takes a particular type of person, and we actually recruit against that type as well. But what we have found is it really improves our quality. We didn't really see everything straight away with velocity, but we definitely saw improvements in quality. We also, I think most importantly, got around that issue of being reliant on a single person for how we're doing it. And I really love that presentation from Lou before, where he actually went back into the code base and found out who was actually working on that particular thing. And trust me, I'm going to turn that on in our environment just to make sure that we can really see who's writing the code that everyone's using. The other thing that we really looked at, there's a diagram up there that looks like two mountains. One of the things that we actually encounter as a development agency is that we're working with lots of partners all the time. So we have about 20 agencies that we work with technically inside the New South Wales Public Service, and we also have lots of partner agencies and partners in environments that we go through. So we've created quite a lot of complexity, and we have quite a lot of dependencies in our system. Now, we're trying really hard to remove those dependencies, but our mountains give us a couple of things. They help us to surface all of the complexity that's going on in our world. So the first one which is the lighter colour, is really the initiatives that we're going through. Now, Service New South Wales delivered about 36 government initiatives last year in a single financial year. Now, that's a really incredibly high rate. So we'll often get an announceable, and that announceable will need to be delivered in 3 months or 2 months, or even sometimes in a shorter period, which means that we really have to be able to quickly respond and reprioritise our work and understand where we're actually going to move our resources and clean up our environment such that we can deploy. So we use the left-hand mountain to help us prioritise our work and ensure that our partners and all of our higher-ups also understand what we've got. And it was really one of the classics that we've had is just understanding the impact of things moving down in that list versus adding stuff to the top. Because I suppose in development worlds, and this would be great for a show of hands as well, how many times have you been asked to add something into your already full list, and then when you've been asked whether you can get more information for it or more money or more time, the answer goes, oh no, you just have to do it. Now, that one I really need to know because people criticise me for doing it. So anyone got hands that have been asked to do something like that? So less than 50%. So I don't have to listen to my developers when they say that anymore because it's obviously not true. User-centered design also became such an important thing for us. One of the keys that we delivered in service for our first lot of digital transactions was abstracting the complexity of government. So government has traditionally worked on a regulatory and a policy framework. So they set changes under the direction of the government of the day to actually look at bringing about changes to the citizens that they represent. Now, that's actually meant that there's been a lot of work done on regulation, on policy settings, on impacts of those policy settings. Now, that's driven a very process-centric view of the world, right? If A, then B, then C, then D, all in a linear space. Now, what Service really wanted to do, and I think it's the trend of the day in reality, is that we needed to refocus that to make sure that we were actually always working to put the citizen at the centre of the thing. So how the citizen interacts with that. And again, this is some of the things that we've been able to observe through our tools. So the other thing that I think was really quite important for us is we changed the way that we thought about infrastructure. When we started, we were an on-premise solution with a couple of SaaS cloud solutions. And what we actually saw is that we were just scaling all over the place. We had one of everything. We just kept building things based on what we were needing, and we were creating full stack solutions in most cases. So going back to understand why we were doing those things in one of our iterations of maturity, we had to look at things like, why do we have so many things that were separate? So how did we end up with dozens of separate infrastructure environments supporting our solutions? So we went back and we thought about what did we want to do, and the first one was repeatability. We needed to make sure that we could actually deploy our environments in such a way that they could be repeatable, and then we got new products, we did things in the same way, we didn't reinvent things all the time. So that gave us a greater view on stability. I think the next thing that we really wanted to get at is understanding exactly what we were doing. So segmentation and telemetry, so Lou talked a lot about the telemetry aspects of New Relic. This is one of the things that we actually had. we had lots of failures in our environments. Applications would fall down for reasons. Quite often it wasn't in the application space, it was in the infrastructure space. But it always took us that big search all the way down to actually look at finding the root cause for these things. And in a Service New South Wales perspective, if somebody comes into a service centre to undertake a transaction that has a digital component to it, and they're from Western New South Wales, and they've travelled 2.5 hours to get there, and they really have to turn up on the day only to find out that a service is unavailable. It's a really disappointing thing. And what happens in the public sector, of course, is they write to their local member. And their local member writes to our minister, and our minister writes to us, and we actually have to do a whole lot of work around it. So it's really important that we ensure that we have the greatest ability to make our systems survivable on impacts. We've also taken a new trend. We're looking at things like bug bounties. We want citizens that are developers also to help us out. So in some of our newer solutions, we've introduced bug bounty. Now, has anyone ever participated in a bug bounty program before? Is anyone in our driver's license bug bounty program? Good. I think one of the things we're doing is making sure that we get the best experience by letting people who are really keen to actually support government in delivery of great services to come through. The self-healing patterns is, again, where we find things that we can actually make our systems more resilient and build them in. Now, we do that through a lot of discovery that comes in there, so that aspect of observability really comes into the fore in that environment. I mentioned that we undertook about 36 initiatives last year, and one of the things that we've discovered in the delivery of those 36 initiatives is because of the complexity we still have in our environment, our time for actual development was less than half of our total time to deploy, which meant that we had a whole lot of build functions around environments, test data, preparedness for moving into production, readiness for go live, training activities. So that meant, again, just over half of our time was not actually about delivering new products for citizens. We needed to really look at changing that. So the biggest drive that we've got at the moment is making sure that we can actually make our environments low touch or no touch for the provisioning, scaling, deployment of our products. So we want the developers to get right in there to make sure that they can actually make the difference to the citizen, rather than what we've been doing is spending a lot of time actually preparing for the developers to do some work so that they can then prepare to get the stuff to the citizens. And the last thing that Service also is really focused on is making sure that we give the power to create new and improved opportunities. Now, Lou talked about the applications that he had in his environment. In our environment, we have a thing called Circle of Service, we have Future of Service. They're two ways where people in the development world, or people in the front line, or people from our customer feedback, we can get new opportunities to create new solutions based on what people want. And the ability for us to scale up, create, and release developments in an alpha or a beta really quickly is one of the things that we're currently a little bit constrained on, because we haven't fully moved to that self-service model yet. So in order for us to get to this point where we can create new value through the people that are closest to the people that want the services, this is a bit of a hold-up for us, but it's really the direction that we need to go. Now, I'll get into a little bit of complexity here to talk about some of these things. So I stated that we started as pretty much a SaaS user and a on-premise environment. We've really made a change to make ourselves cloud native across our environments. We're still using some SaaS services, but we are very much focused on ensuring that what we build for citizens is sustainable and maintainable by our own capability sets. And this is where we've really had to change our ways of working to make sure that we've got all of our developers working and thinking the same way so they can move between products. We created products and product lines rather than just delivering outcomes, and that was one of our big changes. Our cloud movements were there. Now, we talked a lot about costs. We were one of those people that were experiencing sprawl and cloud costs. So we're always looking for opportunities to make it better for citizens in the value for money of the services we provide. So being able to do these things, so you can see New Relic sitting in there. One of the things that New Relic has really surfaced for us is the ability for us to really observe our environment much better than we've ever been able to. Again, I was also happy to hear that the integration with GitHub and hopefully GitLabs is still going to be able to support that traceability even further in our environment. I mentioned that we were multi or omni-channel. Now, omni-channel really meant for us that no matter how a citizen started their services, they could actually continue on the channel that was most effective for them. So if somebody came in or rang up first and said, I wanted to get a responsible service of alcohol license, they could actually initiate that on the call channel and then move through the digital channel to complete it. Now, one of the things that we experienced really quickly is that we needed to create our solutions in such a way that they could be deployed across multiple channels without refactoring or rebuilding them or surfacing different information about them. So this is our omni-channel architecture in a very simplified way. So it really works in the aspect of Service New South Wales is the shop front of New South Wales. It's the customer experience function. It's the area that we wanted to make the best experience for the citizen without having to deal about the complexity of government. In the middle, we've got this transaction processing engine, generic transaction sort of model, where we're looking at how do we actually do the things that we do standard. So identity services, I think there's some caching stuff down there as well. And then we've got what we call our value-added services, which are those ones there. This is how we get the scale and repeatability and the speed. So we have nowhere near as many as the hundreds that Lou mentioned in terms of the microservices, but we're building up our catalogue to do it as well so that we end up orchestrating solutions rather than creating them all the time. And I also mentioned before that we work with partner agencies that are regulators, policyholders. So one of the things that we're really looking at is how we standardise the contracts, the API contracts between ourselves and our partners who need to maintain the system of record. Now that system of record function is incredibly important for government. It proves the value of policy settings. It holds the enforceable data for regulatory frameworks. So making sure that we've got a great relationship with our partner agencies and they can do what they need to do and use the data that their specialised capabilities allow them to support is exactly where we want to go. Now, this is where I think we've had some incredible insights coming from our applications. Now, this is actually a service map of our mobile apps, so both the Android and the Apple version of it. We have, you can see, quite a lot of things that are plugged into this environment. So you can see there's a lot of points to break in it. Understanding this in such a way that we've been able to really make changes, understanding how these things can work with our configuration items, understanding when we're going to make changes, understanding the full impact chain of a failure in our environments. This is where we've really been able to do it. And understanding this complex nature, we've really been able to look at why we're doing something. So for instance, we had an example where we were looking at, we had caching set up in multiple parts of our solution, at an infrastructure level, at an application level, and at a intermediary level through a balancer. So what we actually found is we had a problem once in that space, but we couldn't actually find out where it was. So this is the sort of value that we can get out of the system by ensuring that we understand what's happening and allowing us to do this thing where we can dig that one step deeper. Cost of living is a major initiative that we ran last year. Has anyone heard of it? Anyone heard of Energy Switch? Anyone used it? So Energy Switch is a part of that. So the idea from the government was we were looking at how we could actually reduce the cost of living for general citizens in New South Wales. So we have 71 individual cost savings opportunities that we actually have in that environment. And those 71s are really 71 separate things, all plumbed together in a framework. And it was really important that we actually understood how many people were using it, how they were doing it, what parts of it they were doing. So Energy Switch is probably the most significant usage within it, but there are 71 other ones, or 70 other ones that are in that space. If anybody is really challenged under the cost of living in New South Wales, I advise you all to go and have a look at that website. And there's specialist bookings you can do through service centres as well. But this again, surfacing information on how people were using it, where they were looking for it, how long they were taking to go through these processes, one of the things about the feedback. So this product we were looking at, I think, several iterations of it going in, and as we would introduce new services, we were just adding them on top. So it was really good to understand the impact of adding new features to these solutions as we were going through. But it also gave us other opportunities to dig deeper. So we can track right down to single customer interactions with these things, which is really important to us. It can tell us volumes, it can tell us when people do it. When we launched the CTP refund, which I'm sure if everyone put their hand up, that's the one that they went for, easy money. So when we launched the CTP refund, it went crazy on social media. And in social media, it spread virally. So we ended up with pretty much 2 or 3 million people in the first week or so trying to do that claim, all in really short bursts. It actually brought the system down originally, so one of the things that we had to learn is how we needed to respond to that. Now, we've taken that lesson and we've embedded into it, and this is where we get that elasticity in our environments. And again, you may have heard of the digital driver's license. One of the things that New South Wales is doing is it's going to launch a digital driver's license. It's been in pilot for about a year now. We've been really, really, really cautious about the environments, the scale, the survivability, the quality of the application, the security of the application. We have, I suppose, orchestrated this to within an inch of its life with all of its partners, just to make sure that we've got all the things in place to make that the best experience that we can, with the most possibility for a successful launch. This is the sort of impact that we've got, understanding what's happening at peak times, how many people are actually applying for it, where they're failing, and if they're failing, so I can respond to it really quickly. So, like any system, we expect that there's a lot of moving parts in here and something will go wrong at some stage, but we need to be able to react to it really quickly. Finally, I wanted to sort of talk a little bit about what we can do in the future. So I mentioned that New South Wales government loves to give away money to citizens for deserving reasons. Active kids, creative kids, IVF rebates, senior savers for energy, CTP refunds. All of that runs through a system called the Payment Services Platform. Now, the Payment Services Platform is a mechanism that allows us to take and make payments across all government transactions. This is the location of all of the terminals. I mentioned that example before. If someone has to travel to a service centre to carry out some transactions, which unfortunately some people still do, and in doing this, if they've had to travel for a long period of time, you can see some of those sites are pretty remote. If you turn up and something's not working, it's another day trip to come back and repeat that transaction. So for us to be able to respond really quickly to these environments and make sure that we're proactively managing these things is where we need to be in the future for Service New South Wales, to make sure that the citizen gets exactly what they want, when they want, reliably, consistently and affordably. So we're really looking to make sure that we've got the right sort of observation capabilities to trace everything, to observe everything, to do it 24 hours a day, to think about if something goes wrong, how do we actually get in and fix it before anybody notices? Because that's the key for us, to make sure that we provide the services that are the best for the people of New South Wales all the time for the right money. So again, hopefully I've kept pretty close to time. Thank you for your attention today, and I'm open to any questions during breaks or later on if you want to ask anything specific about us. Thanks very much.